it's Becky and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. I'm not sure who did this originally, but if I find the video I will tag them in the description below. But I wanted to do this video because I saw Amy's mid-year freakout tag and it just made me really want to join in, and I will tag her below as well. So I'm just going to go straight into it, and the first book is what is the best book you read in 2020 so far. This is a little bit of a toss-up for me because I really loved Wicked As You Wish by Chupeco, but I also loved A Court of Miracles by Kester, which I will put up here. And I loved them for two very different reasons. I loved Wicked As You Wish because it felt very fairy tale like, and it was a very unique take on kind of fairy tale stories, putting them in a real life world kind of thing. And Wicked As You Wish, I just really loved kind of the different magic, the fact that our main character can negate magic as her power, and that there's the ice powers and there's the huge twist at the end to do with magic. Whereas for A Court of Miracles, I just really loved the characters. Nina and Etty were just brilliant, and I loved all the different casts that came in and out of the books at different parts, and I loved the relationships formed between different allies as well as enemies. The next question is the best sequel I've read in 2020 so far, and this is again a bit of a toss-up. So I've read two not just sequels, I've read two books which are the final books in their series that I've been reading for a few years now. The first book is The Skyweaver, which is the end of the Ascari series by Kristen and Ciccarelli, and the second book is The Night of the Dragon by Julie Kagawa, which is the end of her Shadow and the Fox series. I have loved pretty much all of the books in both series, and the final books for both of them really helped wrap up the endings so well. For The Skyweaver, I really enjoyed the way that it was all the characters from all the different books were given an ending, despite all the books technically being standalone. I also liked that it gave an added element of magic in the final book. I feel like the first two books, first book was very dragon orientated, the second book was very fighting and political orientated, and this third book brought in basically a goddess and a story wrapped around that, which really brought a lot of that into our main storyline. And then I liked Night of the Dragon for kind of similar reasons. I thought the Night of the Dragon definitely had a lot more magic than previous books because our main character had finally grown into a kitsune that she could be proud of. And I liked that all our characters got given an ending that, whilst I'm not happy about all of them, I thought really fit the tone of the book. I also love any book that kind of incorporates a lot of mythology and folklore, and I really enjoyed that there were certain aspects that just really blew me off my feet when I was reading, and I was so excited to read more. Question 3 is new releases you haven't read yet but want to, and I kind of just want to say all the books. Like, I want to read so many of these new releases, but I can't get around to all of them. The first book is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I've heard lots of good things already, but it's kind of a suspense Gothic thriller, and I'm excited to read it because it's a suspense Gothic thriller kind of book, which is a bit different to what I'd normally read, but I've heard so many good things that I really want to get around to it as soon as possible, and I do love thrillers, and when I'm in the mood for one, I think this will fit perfectly. The next book I really want to read is Rewrite the Storm, which I've already got a copy of, and I want to read this because it was self-published a few years ago. It's now being republished by Orbit, and I'm just excited to see what it's about, and I've already read the first bit and I'm already enjoying it, so I'm really excited to read that fully. And the final new release I want to read is A Declaration for the Rights of Magicians. I haven't heard much about this book, but it's got magicians in it, and I'm just in that mood where I want to read lots of fantasy. It's set in a world where lots of high-powered people are mages or magicians. They're all calling for different things, such as a necromancer in France is calling for the revolution, a weather mage is trying to free slaves, and the English Prime Minister is trying to legalise magic for all the commoners in Britain but abolish it in all the colonies overseas. It's set in the era that all of these things would be happening in the kind of real world, such as the revolution and slavery. But I'm excited to see how the twist on this kind of historical fiction but fantasy happens, and how the mages are reacting to each other, as there's going to be a big thing that causes conflict throughout the world, which they're going to have to join up to help fight, I guess. But yeah, I've heard good things, so I'm excited to read it. And the fourth question is my most anticipated reads for the second half of 2020. And again, can I say all of them because I do really want to read all of the books. I guess the main one is Once and Future Witches by Alix Harrow. I'm lucky enough that I've already got it on my Kindle as an e-arc, but I'm really looking forward to reading it as I've heard really good things already. It's set up as there's 3 sisters use their kind of witch powers or build up their witch powers in order to help change the world in the 1800s. Another book I'm anticipating is Star Daughter, which is where our main character is half star, half mortal. And when a star flare puts her father in hospital, she needs to go find a full star in order to help heal him. It uses a lot of Hindu mythology, but it's also contemporary fantasy, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. Like, the entire concept is really interesting to me. It sounds very magical, and it's been compared to Neil Gaiman's Stardust, which I also loved, so I'm excited to read it. And another book I'm kind of anticipating is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I'm definitely the kind of person that hears a lot about authors and then forgets to read them, and then they bring out a new book and a new series and then I read it and I love it, and I'm fully expecting that to happen with A Deadly Education. I've unfortunately not read any of her books before, but I am really excited to see it because apparently, I've been told by multiple friends, apparently her books are kind of like right down my alley with the kind of fantasy I love. Number 5 is my biggest disappointment in 2020, and that would be No Good Deed. No Good Deed wasn't a bad book, it just wasn't up to the same standards of all the other books I've managed to read this year so far. I've already done a review on it and I did say it was good, and I do think if you like Robin Hood retellings you probably would like it, but there's little bits that are just a little bit annoying, such as the main character and yeah, it wasn't as good as I expected it to be, I think, and it wasn't as good as all the other books I've read so far. And it was really the only book I could think of as a disappointment on my list of books. Question number 6 is my biggest surprise of 2020, and that has definitely got to be The Sin Eater, which I read last month. Surprisingly loved that book a lot more than I thought I was going to. I actually got it because I thought it was a fantasy book and I was wrong. It was historical fiction and there was really no fantasy at all. It was more of a murder mystery kind of thing, and I've really enjoyed reading it. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I was really hooked from the first kind of few pages as to what was going to happen to our main character, and then the kind of murder mystery happened and I was even more excited to read it. So yeah, definitely a big surprise for me. Question 7 is new favourite author, and I think that's got to be Villoso, who wrote The Wolf of Oren-Yaro, which I really adored. I think I just really enjoyed her writing style, and I enjoyed the book so much. And whilst it wasn't my favourite book of the year, I definitely would, if I saw her name on a different book, I would definitely pick it up just for her name. Question number 8 is your newest fictional crush, and this is a difficult question for me because I don't really have fictional crushes. When I read things, I just don't really think that way about the characters in the book. And that's probably one of the reasons why I liked A Court of Miracles so much, because it really didn't push any romantic subplot at all. I really liked the characters in that book, but would I say they were fictional crushes? Probably not. At number 9 is my newest favourite fictional character, and that is going to be Nina from The Court of Miracles. As I just said, I really just adored the characters in this book, and Nina was just a great main character to have. I loved that she was so tough but also really soft and emotional at times, and because she was like this, it didn't take away from her toughness and the perception other people had of her, as actually all of her kind of plans for revenge and vengeance were all based off the fact that she cared a little bit too much for people. So question 10 is a book that made you cry, and that would be Good Me, Bad Me. This book had a lot of dark stuff, and it had a lot of topics which are very hard hitting, and it definitely needs trigger warnings. And so I cried a little bit at this because there's some situations where you do just want to cry, as the main character gets very emotional at times and a lot of bad things have happened to her and other people in this book. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and that is going to be The Iron Will of Jeannie Lo. I don't know why, but whenever I'm in a particularly bad mood, I just want to read kind of middle grade books because they always seem to make me happy. I think this is because for the most part, you're always going to get some kind of happy ending. And the ending of this book and the ending of the duology as well fits so well, and it made me so happy. And I just really loved this book so much. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought this year, and I have literally just bought, and I'm waiting for it to be delivered, the illustrated editions of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and they are beautiful, and I'm really excited to get hold of them and to show them all off to you, but unfortunately they definitely won't be delivered before this video goes live, so I won't be able to input anything, but be sure to keep an eye out as I will probably unbox it on the channel. And last but not least, the last question is question 13, which is, what book do you definitely need to read by the end of this year? And again, I need to read all of them. I've got so many books that I need to read. I've got so many books on my TBR. I've got so many books I want to reread. But I've decided to choose a handful of books to keep myself accountable as to what I should be reading before December. And the first book is Mexican Gothic, which I mentioned before because I really do want to read that sooner rather than later. I normally like to read kind of thrillers as it starts to get kind of stormy like it is now. So it's definitely the right time, I think, especially as we go more closer to autumn. And then also Seven Devils by Laura Lamb and Elizabeth May, which I mentioned before, and I really want to read that as soon as possible as well. And then I just really need to get around to reading The Priory of the Orange Tree because it is a huge book, and if I keep putting it off, I will just never read it because I'll be too intimidated by the width. And the final book I want to be kept accountable for reading before the end of the year is Girls, Serpent and Thorn, because it just sounds like a really interesting concept, and I've heard lots of other people say they've enjoyed it again so far. And yeah, the princess is poisonous to the touch and she needs to find a way to either stop that or to use that to her advantage. And I have no idea where it's going, but it just sounds really interesting. So yeah, thank you for watching my mid-year freakout. If you want to also create this tag, then think of yourself as tagged and do it as soon as possible during the mid-year. And thank you for watching. I hope to see you again soon.